The late 1990s were a time of experimentation, especially with the rise of 3D gaming on consoles. One of the developers on the forefront of that experimentation and eventual revolution was none other than Squaresoft, the future Square Enix. Square's Final Fantasy franchise exploded in popularity during the PlayStation era, giving way to developers embracing the genre that, in years past, wouldn't see the light of day on Western shores. Fast forward 2 decades later, and RPGs, while not as popular as they once were, still provide immaculate avenues to tell stories in video games unlike any other gaming genre. A great example of this occurred in 2018 when Octopath Traveler was released, featuring turn-based gameplay, stylized pixel graphics, and a narrative where players fit together 8 branching stories. Octopath Traveler gained praise and accolades aplenty. Following the release of a mobile prequel, the obvious nature of a sequel was on the horizon and finally arrived in 2023. Being a fan of the original release and old school RPGs like it, I gladly bought Octopath Traveler II with the intent of seeing everything this new adventure had to offer. Though presented as a sequel, Octopath Traveler 2 from a narrative perspective is a completely fresh adventure that allows gamers who didn't play the first game a chance to enter this one without needing any backstory or knowledge of the previous entry's events. But certain mechanical presentations and player-designated choices are rooted in the Octopath Traveler standard, including picking one character that cannot be removed from the active party until their story is seen all the way through. In this gamer's case, the protagonist was Hikari, representing the warrior class. Traveling throughout the massive land of Solistia, the player is able to recruit the remaining 7 protagonists at any time and in any order, though the game does warn of areas discovered and hidden on the map until the player reaches his entry point of the recommended level, meaning it may be easier to recruit, say, the dancer Agnia than Oswald the scholar, as the latter is found on the opposite end of the map if the player initially picked a starting character located on the western continent like Hikari. It would take over 120 hours for yours truly to see the true ending after completing every character's stories, including the newly implemented Cross Paths 2-chapter adventures featuring 2 of the travelers solving a particular mystery while getting to know one of their new allies a little better. Before finishing the final mission and overcoming the last boss, I made sure to complete every side story, with some taking some deep thinking as to how they can be completed, like helping a young woman embrace her mortality in a positive light instead of longing for death, or making a spoiled child understand his attitude will not make his father love him more. Just like the original Octopath, an optional super boss awaits those who are ready to challenge it. A fight that took me at least 3 hours to prepare for and another hour or so to actually overcome, mostly due to experimenting with equipment setups and a sheer luck of the draw in regards to the character turn order. Exploring the world in full, collecting musical records connected to the magnificent soundtrack, and defeating the game's major enemies provided another platinum trophy. Though set in a new land during a period of time where steam power runs the world instead of the original game's more medieval aesthetic, the basis of almost everything about Octopath Traveler 2 comes from the systems established in 2018 and improved upon to ensure the sequel is both more player-friendly and just as challenging during those harrowing dungeons, both mandatory and optional. As noted, picking a protagonist that can't be removed from the party until their story is fully completed is the most important choice a player must make, as it will dictate their playstyle in the early hours and beyond. All 8 protagonists have incredible stories dedicated to their primary classes, with the player unlocking the option of adding a secondary job to any character after discovering the class's guild and meeting specific requirements associated with the dojo. A bombastic battle starts off the hard-hitting Hikari's story rooted in his warrior class, where the player can give him skills like the Vengeful Blade that has Hikari counter a physical attack with a devastating sword slash. Hikari is the Prince of Ku, a nation built on blood, violence, and conquest through war, and looks to change his people's ways, but is stopped by his own brother who seems corrupted by a power beyond comprehension. On the opposite end of the narrative spectrum is someone like Agnia, representing the dancer class, that mixes buffing and debuffing abilities with certain elemental and non-elemental attacks. A figurative ray of light, Agnia delights almost everyone with her dancing abilities, while attempting to reach the same level of stardom as her deceased mother and more antagonistic contemporaries. The merchant class base Patricio adds to any team thanks to his abilities focused on spending currency or leaves to hire temporary help in battle, sacrifice some of his own buffing meter, and rob the rich, the latter being tied to his hatred for capitalism and its cause for poverty that he hopes to rid the world of, starting with his hometown where a crooked businessman ruined the town's economy. Patricio also has 3 character-specific side stories called The Scent of Commerce, including one where the player can spend 100,000 leaves to buy a ship, so players can freely travel the sea to reach some of those optional dungeons and fight some tough enemies. While Patricio could be considered something of a thief, the game's actual thief class character is Throne. As expected, Throne is able to rob enemies of items in their inventory, as well as steal their HP, land sneak attacks, and even use the cover of darkness to blind enemies at the battle's start. Throne's story is a depressing one, as she is a victim of kidnapping by a group of thieves known as the Black Snakes that raise children to be unseen plagues on society, while constantly abusing the wayward youths. Another dark plot is that of Oswald, representing the scholar class. This game's version of the Black Mage. Wrongfully imprisoned for the murder of his wife and daughter, Oswald breaks free from his cold capture in hopes of discovering the truth behind the framing, and who will pay for the destruction of his livelihood and his freedom. Another series of murders starts the quest of the white mage cleric Temenos. Working as an inquisitor for the Church of the Sacred Flame, Temenos presents himself as something of a devil's advocate when paired with a rather by-the-books trainee, who too wants to reach the high level of authority associated with Temenos. The other protagonist with a mystery to be solved is Cassie the Apothecary, a character who can mix certain found and purchasable ingredients together to form helpful concoctions for the party or damaging potions against enemies. While having an innate knowledge of her apothecary abilities, Cassie has no memory of who she is and why she is urged to discover the truth about certain NPCs she constantly encounters, and why apothecaries are looked at with such disdain. Unlike every other protagonist, Ochet is a beastling who is able to communicate with animals while having several animalistic qualities, including a tail. Ochet's hunter class not only gives her the ability to wield a bow and set traps for immediate usage, with the latter pushing an enemy's next turn to the very end of a round, but also capture non-boss enemies to either recruit them for battle or cook them into beneficial stews and jerky. Ochet's story plays more into the overall narrative, connecting every protagonist, as she is tasked with finding legendary beasts to help stop an unseen though upcoming threat that may destroy the entire world. Every character also has a path action that, depending on their method of interacting with certain NPCs, may or may not ruin their reputation in whatever town they're currently occupying, such as Throne failing to steal a rare sword, or Hikari not overcoming a certain adversary in battle that would have resulted in him getting the opportunity of learning a new skill if he had defeated that conquering NPC. Temenos can get NPCs to follow him both to every town and to battle with his path action during the day, while his path action at night allows for him to gather information by fighting an NPC, similar to Hikari in method, and Cassie and Oswald's daytime and Hikari's nightfall path actions in result. Ochet uses her food to recruit NPCs at night, while having the ability to knock them out via a battle during the day, just like Throne and Cassie can do with their nightfall path actions, minus the need to fight like the Beastling. The same items Throne may steal, Patricio can pay for during the day, thanks to his path action. At night, Patricio's money is spent hiring help with certain NPCs providing specific abilities, like saving anywhere from 10 to 30% on the price of using a merchant class's hired help attack. Agnia's dancing skills during the day also recruits NPCs for summoning into battle for a short period of time, and depending on her level, will convince townspeople to give up the same goods Throne can steal and Patricio can buy when the moon rises. Oswald also has the ability to rob people of their items with his nighttime path action, but only if he can defeat them in battle. One of the biggest woes associated with Octopath Traveler was how formulaic the storytelling felt by having every story play out mostly the same, with the plot progression being broken up by a dungeon crawl before more of the character's story is seen, leading up to that character's final boss. While the outline is similar, the narrative presentation is different depending on the character, including Oswald having 2 chapters playing out back to back in a flashback form, and having few major battles throughout his story, while Hikari's journey back to Ku after being exiled from his home by his tyrannical brother in hopes of stopping more bloodshed and further corruption of his siblings' own mind sticks to the more traditional storytelling seen in the original iteration. Unfortunately for players who may find themselves enthralled by a particular story, each new chapter is practically level locked. The suggested level party members should be for an upcoming chapter after completing the previous narrative portion may be anywhere from 5 to 10 levels higher, meaning players will either have to grind if they aren't near that level, or play another story close to their current team level average. This may cause the player to wander around for hours trying to get their team up to par for what's to come, or be forced to explore hazardous areas, resulting in lost progress if their group is overwhelmed by foes between save points that may or may not be placed distressingly far apart. The addition of 2 times battle speed does help the grind slightly, though non-active party members don't gain experience points or job points, unfortunately. This means certain battles may be perfect for a character not being used constantly that forces the player to either go back to the tavern and pick that character, or suffer through a dungeon, though this becomes less of a problem with the option of more secondary job slots. Thankfully, the combat is quite entertaining, no matter if the player is going through stories, taking on particular challenges, or just grinding for experience and job points. The premise is simple. With a team of up to 4 characters, players have to defeat enemies by whittling away their health with a variety of physical, magical, human-assisted, and beastly attacks. As the characters land certain attacks, a meter above their health will rise to the maximum of 5 segments. This is the boost points meter. Spending these segments will increase the protagonist's abilities, be it strengthening and extending the amount of regular attacks used in a round, or making it possible to unleash devastating class-specific maneuvers. Every enemy has a weakness or weaknesses. If the player is able to discover an enemy's weakness and hit them where it hurts the most over and over again, the foe will enter a break state where they are vulnerable to take more damage while being stunned and unable to fight back. Of course, some bosses and optional enemies make things a little more complicated, including summoning allies to lock their weaknesses until those minor foes are defeated. Major enemies also have super attacks that they usually use during the latter half of a fight. If the player is unable to break an enemy before the super attack is performed, expect major, if not fight-ending damage. While the previously mentioned combat systems were established in the prior entry, this game adds something to make battles even more epic: latent ability. Each character has a latent ability associated with a circular meter that fills up as the characters deal and take damage, essentially presented as a limit break a la Final Fantasy VII. Latent abilities aren't just some grandiose maneuver to do damage at the most opportune time when the enemy is in its break state. While characters like Hikari and Ochet have devastating offense-based latent abilities, Throne's latent ability gives her the opportunity to act twice in a single turn, and Particio sees his boost points meter reach the maximum when his latent ability is activated. With all of these systems in place, the game's overall difficulty and general RNG nature is connected to how well the player understands what to do, when to do it, and how effectively equipped their characters are with upgraded job classes, weapons, armor, and accessories. Another addition to the overall gameplay is the day and night cycle. While the day and night cycle will dictate certain things like what path action can be used by a protagonist or what NPC will show up that may or may not be needed to complete a side quest, the time of day also changes the combat. Nighttime allows for more powerful, dangerous enemy encounters than during the day, for bigger rewards if the player can overcome those nocturnal creatures. Certain characters actually thrive when fighting at night, like Throne, as it makes her stealing ability more effective and even gives an enemy an automatic debuff like Blind. Though the game will automatically shift the setting from dawn to dusk, the player can also manually change the night of day at any time. Equipment actually plays a huge role in how well the characters are set up, as leveling is only one part of the goal in making sure a team can conquer any foe. While there are optimum setups in regards to equipment, a majority of the time players are allowed to specialize their weapons and armor around the job classes assigned to each character. As mentioned, job guilds open up the option of adding secondary jobs to any character that isn't already associated with that job. Initially, secondary job classes only allow for one character to be assigned to that job, with players having to earn 2 extra licenses by meeting certain requirements, like collecting a particular item, or learning a new skill to unlock the ability for more than one character to equip that secondary job at the same time. Upon winning battles, characters in the current team will be given job points alongside experience points that, when spent, unlock job skills that can be used in battle. Support skills that unlock when buying a certain amount of job skills in any class prove invaluable, as players are able to mix and match these passive and active skills, including a damage limit breaker skill associated with the warrior class, and the dancer class is a step ahead skill that allows for anyone equipped with it to get an extra turn at the start of a fight. There are also EX skills associated with each character's primary job, with the first being unlocked by completing a character's story, while the second is only gifted by reaching particular shrines hidden throughout Celestia. The divine skill is unlocked when the job class is maxed out in regards to learning every ability, and can only be used with a full boost for devastating effects. There are also 4 hidden job classes, with 2 featuring unique progression systems connected to side quests, including finding rusty weapons for a blacksmith to restore, the Arms Master class, and collecting certain items for an engineer to create his greatest works, passed down to whomever has equipped the Inventor class. From a technical aspect, Traveler 2 is masterfully done graphically and sonically. The soundtrack must be celebrated as one of the best in years, if not decades. Voice acting is used for a majority of every interaction and presented exceptionally well, from dialogue choices to the sound mixing. Sadly, one of the most requested aspects from the original game was more interaction between the protagonists. While there are moments of encouragement and concern during fights, and the previously mentioned cross paths, there are also hidden travel banter moments between characters that is entirely voiceless and text only. Some very heartfelt and humorous dialogue exchanges happen during these travel banter sequences that lack the benefit of voice acting. Another issue with the text-only dialogue exchanges is how fast the text box disappears if the player has the game set to automatic play, instead of manually hitting the confirm button after each statement is finished. The lush backdrops and settings representing each town or major area in this 2.5D experience are gorgeous, as are the animations both in and out of battle. The character sprites are much cleaner in this iteration, though the gigantic pixels that make up everyone are quite large in comparison to the actual model size. This slight problem could have been avoided by making the character models larger so they wouldn't look so pixelated. Another questionable decision in regards to the model presentation is the fact each protagonist's battle appearance changes whenever the secondary job is equipped, and the player can't change it back to the original job's attire for some odd reason. Frame rate drops, crashes, or corrupted saves were non-existent during the equivalent of 4 full days of playing. There is so much to enjoy about Octopath Traveler 2, including magnificent storytelling complemented by rewarding and at times oppressive battles, with the prior being hindered by level-based requirements potentially causing broken narratives if the player isn't high-leveled or willing to grind. In a world where developers continuously say turn-based RPGs are a dying breed or just plain uninteresting, Octopath Traveler 2 feels like a breath of fresh air while invoking a rush of nostalgia. For all the things Octopath 2 does similar to its past contemporaries, and even the franchise's prior offering, the game somehow feels fresh, innovative, and crafted with the utmost care, to the point it stands out amongst the pack unlike any other game in the genre in quite some time. Octopath 2 isn't a perfect game due to the usage of its level-based narrative progression points, most likely causing players to experience character stories in a slightly jumbled manner, and the lacking of protagonist interactions as many hoped for with this sequel. Fans of old-school RPGs will be right at home with this one, and even those who think the premise of handling 8 different characters with unique narratives may sound like too much shouldn't fear about being overwhelmed. There's no reason fans of the genre shouldn't buy this even at the initial asking price of $60 USD, though sales have deducted at least $20 from the original price as of late. Because few gaming experiences compare to landing that victorious strike on a once verbose, but now broken enemy.
My turn. Blood boils. For the pride of Ku.
Your eyes brook no doubt.
I'm awestruck, my prince. From east to west, not a single warrior can stand against you.
Enough sweet words. They'll rust my blade.